Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight uh, here on my YouTube channel. And hope everybody has had a great weekend. Did you have a great weekend, Mr. Rayo?
I don't know. I slept through most of it, I think.
Nice.
My we were watching just before the show. Jeopardy is on, and they had a whole category apparently on space and astronomy. And after the last question was answered, my wife said, "How come you didn't try to answer a single one of those questions, Joe?" And there was a period of silence. He said, "Joe." I said, "Joe." I said, "What? What?"
Ah,
So yeah. So there you go.
all right.
Thank you, David Fuller, by the way, for hitting super chats early this evening.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. And yeah, I did a little fishing today because the weather was so nice here. It was nice and sunny, so I went out and did some fishing.
In your backyard river or
Well, yeah, I mean,
creek or
I
whatever?
had to walk I had to walk about 100 yards to get through the woods to get to the river. But yeah, uh, it was nice and
That's nice.
relaxing. Didn't catch anything. I
Yes.
didn't stay very long, but because
And you didn't even need a permit.
well, not I'm technically I do, but I haven't gotten it
Oh,
yet.
well,
Okay.
well, I won't tell.
Please don't. The Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, Long Island's largest rock salt provider and a provider of everything you need to get you through winter storm cleanups. 631-756-1125. Best prices in town, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. And they are a local business. So you shop at Omni True Value, you're supporting a local business, which these days is a very good thing. And also keep them in mind come springtime because that'll be here soon enough. And you might need mulch, you might need topsoil, whatever it is. They got it there, omnitruevalue.com. So, I looked at everything today from one model to another. Um, it's really, Joe, it boils down to the block. Is it going to be strong? Is it going to weaken enough to allow for some room? Is it going to be um, uh, too strong, or everything gets suppressed to the south? And it's almost kind of useless to go from run to run because we're still a week away from anything happening. So in the meantime, outside of just some passing snow showers from time to time, and there were a couple around today. Did you get anything today?
I don't think we did. Yeah, of course, I was more inside than outside today, but
Yeah, they had a
if it
little.
did, it came and it went.
Yeah, they had a little grapple up in North Jersey, and I noticed on the radar there were a few light snow and rain showers around. I mean, that's really about the only thing that happens this week because you get these weak upper troughs and weak cold fronts go by, and that's it. That's all she wrote.
My wife just said over the intercom, yeah, yes, we did have a few flurries. So yes, we did. A few dander flakes probably.
All right, well that's good. I mean, what are your thoughts about the longer range?
Yeah, what is there to say? We are going to be turning colder as we move on into the latter part of the week. We may have some kind of a system that's mostly to our north and west. It would have seemed to me, Joe, a week from now on the 25th of January. Then we have a system that seems to wind up and get rather active, but pretty much to our south later next week. And then we have another little system moving on by for the final weekend. I can't believe I'm saying this for the final weekend of January. You want to look that far ahead, something like 300 hours ahead for the 30th of January, and then comes February.
Yep.
It doesn't seem to change.
Smart Amat is back on the chat board, back on the December 16th, 17th fluke storm was a fluke uh, scenario, or whatever, however you want to describe it. Okay, it was a fluke, whatever you say. I actually do have a question though, and I'm wondering the answer because I saw you posted on the chat yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Um, something now I'm lost my train of thought. Oh, that this isn't a true block. Okay, and I'm curious as to what you mean by a quote true block. I'm just curious. because if this isn't a true block, I hate to see what a real true block is. But no matter. Just kind of trying to understand this all. 51 likes and we've barely spoken, Mr. Rayo. So our audience is wonderful. Thank you for the 52 likes, and also special thanks to the one idiot who dislikes the show before it even starts. And
There's two of them actually.
oh, there's two
I
idiots.
see two here. Yeah,
I'm having trouble
whatever.
hearing you, Joe.
You have trouble hearing me.
Yes,
Well,
I'm
I
having a
don't know
little.
what else I can tell you.
Yeah, you're kind of
Let me
fading in
see.
and out there.
Hello? Hello there.
Okay.
Hi.
How's that?
Yeah, if you maybe change your setting, I hate to do this to you here, but see if you go on your lower right. Do you see that little the speaker icon?
No, I don't see anything.
You don't have
There's
a
almost
You don't have a bottom menu on your board with a speaker icon.
uh no.
All right. Well, you know what? If they can, there's nothing I can do. If your voice is low, I have your mic levels
I
all the
better
way up.
get it. I better get well, why don't we ask the audience? Audience, can you hear me out there? Are you having problems hearing me? Am I coming in a little bit low?
Well, we have to wait
Not
for the 30
not
second pause now.
not socially, but how low can I go?
Yes. All right.
Yes,
Well, you know
loud,
what?
loud and clear. Pat BFD. Yes, yes, you're good. Loud. We can hear you fine. We hear you, says David Shorts. Shorts? No, Schwartz.
Okay, they
Really?
say they can hear you fine. I've got your levels potted all the way up, so if they can hear you fine, then that's all that matters. All
Yeah.
right, so
It's amazing what
uh,
a little bad breath will do.
yes, please.
Huh.
So I'm going to bring up that Atlantic satellite. That's become my satellite du jour uh, with with this true or untrue block, whatever that means. So let me bring up the let's bring up the Atlantic satellite. It was quite
And one of our
interesting looking
and
at
one of
this today.
one of the people on the chat board asked. He said, I mentioned yesterday about a Baja low. I got a chuckle out of that because he spelled Baja BAHA, and he wanted to know what that is. But that's simply a storm that, especially during the winter time, in the upper levels of the atmosphere, a closed off low pressure system over the Baja California area, which sometimes will open up and move north and eastward and tend to, not all the time, but sometimes tend to produce a significant storm when it gets to the Atlantic coastline, which means trouble for us in the form of rain and or snow. And the few Baja systems that we've been seeing this winter have really done nothing. They've sat there, they've opened up and flattened out. And but again, as you said yesterday, Joe, there's no room for any kind of adverse weather in this type of a pattern. So there you go.
Well, look at this loop because you really don't get to see this too often. But look over Greenland. You can actually see the rotation, the clockwise rotation of this big blocking high.
Yeah.
I mean, that is really impressive. You don't really see it that often. I mean, we haven't had an opportunity in a long time to have a closed upper high like this, but my God, I mean, it's up at like 65 degrees north and further north where everything is usually blowing from west to east, and you've got the upper air blowing from north to south and then from west to east across the North Atlantic and southeast to south, well, southeast because everything along the coast of Labrador is actually moving to the northwest. And this is the problem here because Joe, these systems that just like Sunday system, for example, that's rotating up, weakening, and then some remnant shortwave then comes around and re-strengthens as it rotates back into the northeast and into eastern Canada, and all that really does is create this northwest flow that you can't do anything with.
And Joe, another thing which, just getting off the case for a moment, I'm just looking at the drought information for the United States. And I got to tell you something. Last year, the last couple of years, we had like the bare minimum amount of drought in the United States. Only about 10 or 20% of the country had any serious drought situation. And now, looking at the drought situation across the western, virtually the western half of the country has some variation of drought. And in fact, in places like Nevada and Utah, Arizona, part of New Mexico, into portions of Colorado, part of New Mexico, Texas, West Texas, it is not just drought; it's severe drought. So all of a sudden now, it has become bone dry across the western half of the country, as opposed to the last couple of years where there was plenty of moisture. I mean, remember last year there was lots of snow for everybody, lots of wet weather for everyone. Now all of a sudden, the whole western half of the country seems to have dried out or dried
Yeah.
up, so to speak.
Well, I mean, that's what a lot of times in active winters, you're if we're not getting anything, somebody else is. And you're seeing storm after storm, maybe going to the lakes or going, up in the plains or wherever it is, or in the Rockies if the trough is out to the west. And it's one after another. But this year's been, there's a lot of areas across the U.S. that are uh, basically, maybe a snow drought is a little bit too strong a phrase to use, but there are a lot of places. There are a lot of places that are seeing subnormal snows, particularly up around the areas with lake effect. And yet there are some exceptions to that, like parts of eastern New York, like Binghamton and on up north of Albany, and patches in parts of northern New England that are actually running a little bit above normal. And then of course we saw that area, probably parts of the South are running a little bit above normal with regards to snowfall. So it's a little bit of an odd, it's kind of an odd year all the way around. Sort of
Well,
matches
William,
what's been going on, with everything else, I guess. But um, still, it's for snow lovers. They're not, it's not just this area that's hasn't seen anything really since mid-December. There's a lot of other areas that are lacking.
William Huber is asking on the chat board, Joe R., you still think it's going to be a backload winter? And it was followed up almost immediately by Bill Rogers, who I guess is one of my disciples now, because he says, Joe Rayo's charts predict a big February storm. He said so.
Well, then
So
it must
I hope
be.
I hope by the end of February I'm not sounding like Ralph Cramden and going hamina 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 hamina. But
Well,
we'll
look,
see. We'll see.
in the short term, and by short term, I mean in a general sense, the next couple of weeks, it really is all about this block out in the Atlantic and whether that block relaxes or not. And I noticed today, the models on the 12Z runs all suddenly went from taking lows up to the western lakes, which to me seemed just utterly ridiculous. All went the suppressive route, and the European was incredibly flat. The Canadian was flat. The GFS was probably um, robust for the wrong reason in the other direction. It came back from trying to take something to the Western Lakes, and instead taking something off the Mid Atlantic and then Northeast, which I thought was way over. I thought was way overdone given everything we've been dealing with. So I still think if you're watching this every day, if you're watching this from every model run, you're going to continue to see this sort of tug of war between the block in the Atlantic and everything else that's going on in the West, and whether does the block relax. And if you look at that loop that we showed you before with that counterclockwise motion around that upper high, it's hard to see how that thing's going to break down anytime soon.
Well, it's going to have to. Eventually everything breaks down, and again, it's kind of difficult to say when, but I think. How do you feel about the fact that maybe, just maybe, the door might open a crack early next week for some kind of a system that'll develop and whirl off the mid-Atlantic coast? That one for a week from tomorrow. That both the ensemble models of the European and the GFS are alluding to. The GFS is a little bit further to the north. The European is a bit more to the south, but it seems that there is at least a small and I underscore that word small possibility that something interesting might come out of that if it holds together and this pattern allows it to happen
Yeah.
for the early part of next week.
Well, you just said the key words, allow to happen. If the block, this is always a situation where if the block is too strong, everything gets suppressed to the south. Like we're going to see late this week, there's going to be rain across the Gulf states that's going to get pushed southeastward. So because the block is preventing it from any kind of low to develop and move northward. So that's one issue. If the block weakens too much, then you're going to wind up with a primary that's going to want to go uh, inland or even west of the Appalachians. So you're threading a very fine needle here, where you need the block to relax just enough to allow for something to come just far enough north. I think you could say that the window is open for something to happen, but you really are hinging on that block to weaken, and we have to start seeing some indication that there is going to be let's call it a relaxation. If the block can relax, yeah, then I think something certainly could happen, and it should certainly be cold enough with the high that's coming down this weekend and into early next week, and the higher pressures that are going to be up to our north and northeast trying to wedge down. So I think the puzzle pieces are there, but bottom line is the block's got to weaken.
Interesting little piece of New York weather history from Rob Friedlewitz. And if you've never seen Rob's website, I strongly urge you to check it out. It is the starry eye. I'm actually gonna put the URL on the chat board so you can take a look at it. He is amazing. He is able to compile all kinds of interesting weather information about New York on a daily basis. And according to Rob Friedlewitz, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, it's either Friedlewitz or whatever. He says today in New York weather history, January 18th, based on daily records going back to 1970. And Joe, when I say that to you and I, it seems like only a few years ago, but in thinking about it, 1970, that was 50 years ago.
Right.
January 18th is the date most likely to have a low temperature, at least in Central Park, in the single digits. It has happened 9 times. In 1974, it was 6 degrees. 1976, 6 degrees. 1977, a mere 2 degrees on this date. 1982, 0. 1994, 4. 1997, 7. 2000, it was 3 degrees. 2003, 7. And 2005, 9. A typical winter day has had 1 or 2 such frigid readings. I don't think we had a single one of those kind of days at Central Park in the last few years. And according to Rob Friedlewitz, if it was to happen, this is the most likely day for it to happen. And quite obviously, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So, but it's interesting to point out nonetheless.
I know Bill Rogers might be he's a big fan of yours. I know he hates the fact that I got the National Weather Service radar up. Oh, there's nothing I can do here. It is what it is. And we do have lake effect going on, and also there's an upper trough, so you can see these bands of snow that are around the Great Lakes and in parts of the Northeast. We got a little bit of rain down in parts of Texas and Oklahoma, and just some light moisture up in the Pacific Northwest. And let's bring up the watches and warnings map. There's not a whole lot happening here. In New Mexico, we have a bunch of winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories up, and they extended to southern Colorado. We also have a lot of wind advisories and high wind warnings up in California, parts of southeast Wyoming, a few counties up in Montana. There's a narrow strip of winter weather advisories from just north of St. Louis and across a little band there across southern Illinois, southern Indiana, northern Kentucky, and into West Virginia. Also in upstate New York, east of Lake Ontario, where they've been getting quite a bit of snow. I've been seeing a friend of mine that's up there, Shane Muckey. He's been putting up stuff and with regards to those big snow bands that come into Lake Ontario. One of these years, Joe, I can do it now. One of these years, I'm going to go up there because I really would love to see a lake effect event. And in the dark blue in Southwest New York, or whatever that color is, aquamarine, those are lake effect snow warnings that they have up for Southwest New York, because they're going to measure it in feet in that particular area.
Wow. Wow. I'd like to see that. You and I have both witnessed, albeit on a very short scale for about 5 or 10 minutes over the years, a snow squall coming through the New York metropolitan area. And I can't even imagine having snow falling at such an intensity, not just for a few minutes, but for several hours or more. And you can very easily see when you do experience that, why or and how places like Buffalo and Rochester and Watertown, especially, pick up like snow in the feet in just only a very short interval of time.
Yep. So let's look at the overrated, what are becoming the vastly overrated teleconnections. The
Yeah.
NAO is now. I'm gonna put a different spin on this, and I'm just gonna say that the fact that it has been negative for so long hasn't exactly borne much fruit for snow lovers. So I'm thinking I'll take my chances with the NAO actually rising up to the neutral line around February 1st, toward the end of the month. That might be a good thing, because sometimes, a lot of times when the teleconnection, when the NAO goes from a negative value, or excuse me, a strongly negative value, to the zero, to the neutral line in a hurry, that's usually telling you that something's happening somewhere. So we'll keep an eye on this. The trend upward, though, covers next week, and that's why you're probably seeing these models struggling with what they want to do with that the system for early next week that's going to be coming out of the southern plains. The Arctic oscillation also, well, it's kind of zigzagging up and down into next week, and then it also does a big spike to the neutral line. Again, it didn't bear much fruit, certainly did not bear much fruit with respect to cold air. So we'll see what it does when it goes positive. And by the way, I would like to point out that during the winter of 2014 to 2015, the AO, and also in 2013, 2014, the Arctic oscillation was positive for a lot of the time. So that would have argued, if you went strictly on the positive AO, you would have not have forecasted the kind of winters that those two winters were. So just bear that in mind. The teleconnections are not end alls. And the PNA, the Pacific North America Index, which drops down to sharply negative here into early next week, also then takes a sharp turn upward as we head into around February 1st. So this was last night's run. We could come back tomorrow, and these teleconnections could be different. So we'll see. We'll see what that means. I just wouldn't necessarily come to any kind of conclusion as to what that would mean as far as the short range weather is concerned.
So what you're saying is that sometimes you can have a paradox of sorts in terms of what some of the models are saying. That
Well, yeah.
what doesn't look what does not look necessarily favorable sometimes can lead to a favorable outcome. If, for example, in this case, you want snow
Right.
or stormy weather.
Well, even Dr. Judah Cohen, I remember a tweet of his a couple of weeks ago talking about the off the wall negative AO was actually the weather it was producing was what you would normally see with a positive Arctic oscillation. So obviously, obviously you cannot look at just one thing. I mean, clearly for us, the NAO is front and center, because we're seeing the obvious effects from that. In that we had 12 days in a row of no precip. Now we've got another 8-day streak that we're going to put together, so or longer. So yeah. I mean, the NAO is doing what it's supposed to do, which is basically suppress everything. But again, the changes, having the teleconnections in your favor, and the only one that, by the way, was not in our favor was the East Pacific oscillation, and David Fuller actually sent that to me. So let me bring that up.
And William Huber brings up a very good point, and this is something that we've been saying all along for most of this winter about, hey, did you see what the models are generating 7 days and 10 days? And sometimes even as much as 15 days out. And William Huber writes, 10 days ago on the models, all hell was supposed to break loose on today,
Yeah.
and it can't be any nicer out there here in the Northeast. And you're absolutely right, William Huber. It was very tranquil. So, you got to take it easy when you start looking at stuff beyond, let's say, 4 or 5 days out, because these models have not been at all good after that length of time.
And by the way, and on the East Pacific Oscillation, which I have said many times, of all the ones to look at, this is the one that really has the most value in my view when it goes negative. And we are going into this period right now, uh, starting today, in fact, where we're crossing the neutral line. This is the GFS ensemble on the East Pacific Oscillation, and it actually goes sharply negative for starting Friday's the 22nd. And so early next week, we start to rise up toward the neutral line. So again, that rise up to the neutral line is important. So that those dates around the 24th, 25th ish is when it gets back to the neutral line. And then the other thing to look at is you go at the end of the month, the EPO is all the way up to +4, almost 4 standard deviations above the mean. Because when the EPO is negative, it's usually, that's usually a cold, that's spreading out cold air across Canada and the U.S., and we're seeing that happen starting now and through the rest of this week and into this coming weekend. So there's the EPO at least lends support that there is a window here of opportunity that is going to take hold. So we'll see.
However brief.
Well, however brief, but again, it's the that could change tomorrow. And again, the NAO, if it comes back, if it goes briefly to neutral and then comes back negative, or if it even gets to neutral, because we don't know what it'll bring tomorrow. If the NAO stays negative, then we'll have to deal with whatever cold air we can get out of from Eastern Canada. So that's we'll be back to where we started from, which is where we are now.
Right.
Okay, so let's go. I'll go to the 12Z run of the GFS. And of course, we've got this northwest flow. You've got the block to the east. Here comes some rain into Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. And of course, what happens? That all gets suppressed southward because there's another low, that big rotation that I talked about before. Another low drops down southeast to north of Lake Huron. On Friday, there's a weak cold front that goes by, and that brings a shot of colder air and a cold high in for the weekend. I don't think there's any argument there. And then, of course, on the day run, at least in the world of the GFS, you had enough relaxation of the block. It's still there, by the way. If you look on the surface map, you can see the isobars from the ocean storms are still out just to our east. So the amount of room here is pretty tenuous. But there was more blocking on this run than the prior couple of runs. So here comes a low. It wants to, you think it's going to start, looks like it wants to go up toward northwest Ohio. It gets to St. Louis and sort of comes to a grinding halt. You've got all this higher pressure that's building up from, eastern Canada going back west into central Canada. So that kind of acts as the wall, and the low just basically redevelops out to the east. And the snow lovers were putting up all the snow maps on social media out of this. But you look at the European, on the other
And it's
hand.
more suppressed on the European. Yeah.
Right. Now here's the European with a 992 low in northeastern Arkansas. So by Tuesday morning, it kind of looks like the GFS to an extent, a little slower. But that low where does it wind up 24 hours later? It's out there between South Carolina and Bermuda. And you have this big high building down from Canada down the East Coast. Look at the wedge. Look at this wedge that you see right there. All those isobars kind of V'ing into North Carolina. And then it had this next low that tries to come out and goes to southeast Ohio, with the high over the top next Thursday. So the European and the Canadian say that it's not the first system, it's the second one. and the GFS says it's the first one and not the second one because it weakened the second one. Yeah, this is truly a hair puller, I guess, or will be a hair
Well,
puller.
maybe if you look at something midway between the two models, you could say to yourself, well, that's great. The high will be so strong it's going to maintain its presence. The low will be just strong enough to edge or nudge far enough north up into our area or to affect our area. And the tight gradient between the two, even though we may not get a tremendous amount of snow, might actually lead to a few hours of near blizzard conditions. I mean, if you really want to play your hand out and look at this from,
You better draw
you
five
know,
aces out of that card deck.
exactly. It's a royal flush if I ever saw one.
Yeah, and the upper,
That's still
and interestingly enough, and you look at the upper air. This is for Thursday. Look at that, how strong that upper high is over Greenland. And by the way, this is what a negative EPO looks like, because you've got ridging up into Alaska and into Western Canada. So you've got a flow that, however brief, is somewhat cross-polar. So you're getting a little bit of polar air, let's call it quality polar air. But over time, that connection does break to a large extent. And in fact, the European actually completely disintegrates that upper high at the end of the period. I don't know whether that continues to fall apart, because I'm looking at this and it looks like you could make there's still ridging there in northeastern Canada up toward Greenland. And then I notice on the GFS that the upper high comes right back, almost in the same spot. As soon as these maps flow, but you'll see that after an initial weakening, it actually starts to strengthen again up in the areas around in the Davis Strait and toward Greenland. So the block goes away, it weakens. That would suggest to me, if we when we see the ensembles tomorrow, you might see it trend toward the neutral line and then go back negative again. I mean, that's kind of how it looks to me.
Yeah.
So
Agreed. Yeah. So we'll see. And again, Joe, we're talking about an event like 7 days out. What did I just say 5 minutes ago? After 5 days, you really have to put your tongue firmly in cheek to believe anything. And let's come back if we see something like this, or some potential, on Thursday or Friday of this week. Then maybe we can start getting a bit more excited. But right
right.
now,
I
it's just
think
as well to be all gone tomorrow.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see over the next, you're going to see for the next three days, this back and forth, this jostling up and down, where the models are struggling with the strength of the block, and it's either a little further north or a little further south, depending on how the models handle the upper high over Greenland. So you'll get runs like the 12Z GFS, and then you'll get runs like the 18Z GFS, which has a weaker low going up toward Buffalo. And when I saw that, I thought, it's back again to trying to weaken the block too quickly. So that's the fight here. That's the battle. And if you understand that, okay, if you're forecasting this, or even if you're not forecasting this, if you're just kind of watching this and you're a weather enthusiast and you're watching this, understand that it's all about the block and the fact that it's dominating the weather, not just in the U.S. but also in Europe as well. So so that's where you need to look to see what the outcome is going to be here, and that's it. By the way, we are at 99 likes. Could somebody hit the like button to take it over 100, please? Joe and I love it when it goes over 100, so that would make us very happy. 103. Thank you very much to the 4 people who did. And also, if you're watching, by the way, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, use your Gmail account and hit the subscribe button so that you get notifications of the Joe and Joe Weather Show when we go live, and anything else that I produce on my YouTube channel. So I don't know. There's not much. There really isn't a whole lot more we can talk about. There's no major storms around. There's no minor storms around. And I did, by the way, I had snow last night here again. Not for long. Not for long. but I did
You're
have
going to get,
I did have some wet snowflakes. Oh, and Bill Rogers asked if I can hunt on my own land. I don't know if I can here. Um, well, maybe I can because like yesterday, as I'm sitting around yesterday afternoon relaxing with a glass of wine, I heard someone nearby was practicing his with his gun and was firing, firing multiple rounds of bullets. So
yeah, we hear that up where I am here
yeah,
sometimes.
so I'm guessing. I think in Georgia you can hunt on your own land.
The
I
question
think.
is Georgia one of the states? There are 30 states where a mourning dove is actually a game bird, and you can shoot that. The other 20 you can. I don't think you could do that up here in New York. But if you ever heard a mourning dove,
Right.
it's a glorified pigeon.
I know.
Yeah.
I had this pair of mourning doves that used to come every year and nest in my giant blue spruce tree in the front of my house.
Uh-huh.
And I forget what year it was, in the late 2000 noughts. There was a big windstorm on St. Patrick's Day, a wind and rainstorm, and it knocked my tree down. It pushed it on an angle, and well, I don't know what the birds met. Unfortunately, some cat went in there
Oh,
and took care of them. So it was kind of sad because I really love seeing birds nesting around your house.
mhm.
I always look at that as a sign that the birds kind of trust you. So they, and
Yeah.
having raised a baby
Um,
robin one year that we found on the curb to adulthood, um, I have that connection. I guess you want to call it. We can call it a connection.
when I when I lived in Levittown during the winter time, underneath our awning, I mean, we could open up the front door and we could see the awning. And underneath the awning, every night there was a bird. I guess it was a finch or a sparrow that would take cover and used to stay there on winter nights. We ended up nicknaming it Tweety or whatever. And at sunset, I'd look around and say, "Oh, he's not there yet." And if, maybe an hour later, "Oh, Tweety's here. He's getting ready to bed down." That kind of thing. Little bit of nature there that you could
Yeah.
get together with it. And about last week, we had a coyote outside our bedroom window howling.
Oh,
That was
that's not
that was
fun.
that was not fun. 2:15 in the morning.
Oh God. Well, it's better than that foghorn you had to deal with. Remember?
Oh, that's right. Oh, that was about a month ago. Thick fog, and that thing kept going off like every 15 seconds or 20 seconds. We think it was in Peekskill, but we're still not sure what it was.
Right. Well, yeah. I know. There's coyotes now on Long Island. I don't know how they got there. They either swam or they went across the bridges. They somehow or hitched a ride somehow. Okay,
And they didn't
so
pay any toll.
so we have Briller Jeopardy tonight. And
Yeah.
the theme tonight for the chairman is inauguration day questions. So, what is the
Okay.
average high temperature at noon on January 20th in Washington, D.C.?
I will say the average high
At noon.
at noon.
So, the average
I
temperature at noon on
I'm going
January
to say
20th.
I'm going to say 48 degrees.
No, 37
37?
at noon.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I
That's
think I
chilly.
think their average high at the bottom of the winter cycle is about 41.
Hmm.
In DC. So 37 at noon, 41 for the daytime high. I think that works. What was the
I would throw
highest
it.
what was the highest temperature at noon on January 20th? And who was the president of that on that particular day? On that particular inauguration?
All right. Well, it has to have come after, I think, 1936, with 1937, because originally Inauguration Day was on the 4th of March. And then we changed it, I think, during the Roosevelt administration or during the Truman administration. So the highest temperature, Uh, how about um, how about 52 degrees? And that would be
Close.
during during the Eisenhower administration, I'll say.
55. Reagan, first 1981.
And that's amazing. You know why? Because he was a two-term president, and for his second inauguration, 4 years later, it was like near record cold, and they had to have the swearing-in ceremony indoors because it was so
Right.
bitter. It was dangerously cold, I think.
And you just took care of the next question, is what was the lowest temperature at inauguration day, and who was president? And it was Reagan, and for his second inauguration it was 7 at noon.
Yeah,
7 above. What
the
president?
mirror, the mirror image of his first inauguration. Yeah,
Okay, so what president on January 20th inauguration day had the deepest snow cover on the ground? Snow cover.
that's that's an easy one. That had to be the John Kennedy coming off of the big snowstorm that happened the night before, and I think Washington D.C. had what about 6 or 8 inches of snow on the ground.
Eight.
Obviously, they plowed away. Yeah,
Eight.
yeah.
Yeah, that was the Kennedy inauguration, January 20th, 1961, with 8 on the ground. And bonus question, because it's Martin Luther King Day, which president signed to law making Martin Luther King Day a federal holiday?
Well, today was the 35th anniversary. So who was president 35 years ago? 21, 14. So I guess it was Ronald Reagan,
Ronald
right?
Reagan. They signed the bill in
Yep.
1983.
Yep.
So there. Yeah,
And there you go.
that was actually pretty interesting. The inauguration stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so I guess that wraps it up for tonight. And just not there's not, as I said, there's not a whole lot else happening. You can see that the weather across the country was quiet. With a minimal amount of warnings. There's no major storms going on. We haven't had it's been a what? Excuse me. I mean, truly a major storm that goes from one end of the country to the other over the course of a week, where we can track it all the way across. It has it's been quiet for quite a while here. It really has. I mean, not just here, but in other places. You've had patches here, patches there, but we haven't had that one storm that comes into the West Coast and wreaks havoc there, and then crosses over to the Rockies and wreaks havoc there, and then moves into the midsection and wreaks havoc there, and then comes into the east and wreaks havoc here. It's been a while since we've had something like that. Oh well.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned the situation for a week from now for Tuesday. Let's see whether or not that still is on the board and still on the table by the end of the week. And then maybe we can start getting excited. And then again, maybe we'll safely say, well, you remember that thing that we were talking about at the beginning of the week? Now it doesn't have any signal whatsoever on any of the models, so it's obviously not going to happen. So
Even
feel
Railroad says it's quiet up where he is too. So everybody's quiet.
remember what they used to say on those old grade B movies or radio shows? It's quiet, too quiet.
It's too quiet. Yes.
It's too quiet. So we'll see.
Exactly.
We'll see.
All right. Well, that wraps it up here. So everybody, thanks for being here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. We love our loyal audience. Yes, WTS, the show is ending. We started at 7:30, so if you just got on, sorry. If you've been on all the way through, well, I mean, 48 minutes. Coming up on 48 minutes. That's not too shabby. We've gone longer. So we'll be back tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern Time, right here. Thank you, David Fuller, for hitting Super Chat tonight. I think that's it, right? I've said my goodbyes.
I said my goodbye. There's not much to say and not much to add. So hopefully we'll have more to say as the week progresses, Joe.
All right, folks. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
Night.